Chapter 44, Part 2. Gregory wanted to know more about the monastery of the Unchanging Ones, and sometimes they spoke together of the place. Atta did not know exactly where it was, but they did look at some maps, and Atta pointed to where he thought it might be. The Guru explained that its unusual monks had come together because they had discovered a task that required endless attention, and so, as long-lived as they were, they thought themselves particularly well suited to such a job. "And what was that task?" asked Gregory. "Why, praying for the entire world," said Atta. "Without sleeping and without dying, they could pray for the world almost without interruption, and so they thought this had to be their special calling, and the reason why they had been granted such an unusual gift of a long lifetime. I too have sometimes wondered if there is any point to my longevity, and if I should perhaps also be spending it in some kind of useful and more holy way, such as spiritual service," said Gregory. "If you really are called to a spiritual path, then it will become your responsibility to pray for the entire world, and not just for yourself and your own heart's wishes," Atta pointed out. "You would have to become much more mature and come to trust yourself more completely in all things. You would have to love your Vivian maybe a little bit less, and love all fellow creatures and mortals a whole lot more. But you are still young for your kind. Who knows how you will yet change, and what wisdom will come to you. There is promise in you. I would not bet against you just yet." "Does wisdom come gradually, then, over a long period of time?" asked Gregory. "Yes, at first," said Atta. "But then it completes its final transformation in you all at once. That is what is called enlightenment. It happens in an instant, or sometimes in several instances, over and over." "Nothing happens in an instant except magic, no?" countered Gregory. Atta smiled. "And who says that enlightenment is not magic?" he said. "The spark is in you. It may happen yet." "When we were in Tibet, the head monk asked me if I was a monk back in my own country," said Gregory. "Maybe he saw something of spiritual promise in me." "Tell me more about the time you went to Tibet," Atta urged. "You went looking for a book." "I went in search of a book on the true nature of time, and instead I found a book on meditation. It was not what I expected," admitted Gregory. "The true nature of time is hardly what anyone expects it to be," said Atta. "To us, time is the fabric of the mantle of God. But God himself does not experience time. After all, what would he need time for? Chronology is here because it is a powerful tool of teaching, and we are all the universe's pupils. We learn its lessons both individually and collectively. Meditation steps us out of time momentarily, to clear our heads and to let us absorb the instruction." "But what are the lessons for?" asked Gregory. "We strive in order to become more holy and godlike ourselves," said Atta. "Think of it as a sort of cleaning, as if we were a bowl of lentils fallen onto the ground, and now each one must be gathered up and cleaned again. Unlike lentils, we are deemed worthy to participate ourselves in this process, to work on our own progress and salvation. What an honor, no?" "I suppose so," said Gregory. "But it doesn't often feel that way. Often it just feels like you're a dirty lentil." "We need to be constantly reminded of our worth, especially in our own minds," said Atta. "And as for time, I think you can give up your search as to its true nature. It is important to have time in our universe, but it is less important for us to fully understand it." Gregory could not help but feel disappointed. And here I thought, like Volv, that it might actually be the key to everything. Atta shrugged. I have seen no sign of that. The key to education is not the chalkboard, but the educational content. Look for hidden meaning elsewhere, Gregory. On another of Gregory's visits, Atta said, Now tell me about this latest war. How is it that you are not fighting in it? Gregory blushed. I felt that I should not go, he said. It seems cowardly, I know, but... Stop there, said the Guru. The acquisition of wisdom is never cowardly. I was going to say that I think this was a very mature decision on your part. I began to worry that I might not be able to withstand another war. You know how I told you that I lost my ability to speak for a few days. Well, that frightened me, and I thought maybe I had gone too far, said Gregory. There were probably other warning signs of my increasing internal weakness, but I missed them, he added. Atta nodded. At least you are beginning to see now, he said. And it is very good how you are coming to admit that there were things that you may have missed before. You must also begin to realize that your nature is not a hideous blight or a corruption which requires the frequent application of corrective sacrifices to make up for it, like when you risk your very existence in every war. You do not live, then, in the law of love as your Christ gave it. No, you still want to make yourself live under the old eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth rule. Why? It is unnecessary. Do not go to this war. It is not for you. Or find another way to support it than with your body. I tried giving money, said Gregory. I went into the bank to buy war bonds and was told those haven't been issued in decades. I left feeling ridiculous. Atta smiled. Ah, the passage of time gives you trouble, doesn't it? I cannot even begin to imagine it. Well, don't worry. You will find a way to support this war somehow, but do not enlist. You cannot serve mankind only in this one way, even if you have reluctantly gotten good at it. Now that you have tasted so much of war, do you not think that the world should focus its efforts instead on peace? And from whence would that peace come, if not from each and every heart? From your heart. You are so defensive of your passions, but do you imagine that passions lead to peace? Atta let the question hang in the air for a moment before continuing. All of the wars in this world were born out of passion, inflamed to the point of violence. You cannot both hate war and love passion at the same time. I know you imagine your passionate nature to be an entirely admirable characteristic, but is it really? Think of its accompanying hard edge of stubbornness. It would serve you better to think of passion instead as your personal challenge, something to overcome. There can still be great depth of emotion, even without inflammatory passion, you know. All of this frenzied back and forth, I want you, I hate you, I miss you, I need you. No, leave it simply at, I love you. Always. Your prayer should begin and end there. Well, as to prayers, most of the ones I know have many more words than that, said Gregory. Most of the time, they are set formulas of supplication. Aren't there such memorized formulas for prayers in your country as there are here? Asked Gregory. Well, there are, but on the whole people misunderstand prayers and affirmations, said Atta. Regardless of the presence or the lack of memorized phrases, most people think prayers are the same as selfish wishes, or as requests for others to become less as they are, and more as we would want them to be. Such prayers will never work. Your affirmation cannot be, I want Mary to love me. It needs to be, I want to deeply feel love and acceptance in my whole person. Praying to the universe to change certain others in specific ways that we might wish them to change are some of the most futile prayers that people make. No, the best prayer to make is always, "Thank you, and I love you." There's nothing more meaningful to be said than that. Only thank you, and I love you. Can it really be so simple? Gregory wondered. It can, and it is, Atta told him. Gregory went home yet again, lost in thought. Then, another time, Atta asked him, "Where are the dividing lines between you and your beloved?" "There are none," said Gregory loyally. "Oh yes, there are," said the Guru, "and some of them you yourself put there." "It isn't true," argued Gregory. "This urge to worship her that you have told me of, well, would you worship yourself then?" Atta asked. "No, we always worship something outside of ourselves, something larger and infinitely more worthy. And you have spoken also of how you feared to lose her. What is it that you thought you could ever lose, if she is in you and you are in her, and there are no dividing lines?" Atta wanted to know. "Oh, when you say it like this now, it seems foolish, but when you are in the moment and she is leaving you, and your heart is being twisted and torn in half, well, what can I say? It doesn't feel so reasonable and calm then," said Gregory. Atta looked at him closely. "You and I fall readily into adoration, but we must rise above this more adolescent kind of adoration in order to truly be able to be one with the beloved. Then you are not forever putting what you desire beyond your own reach. Then the spiritual comfort that you find in her will remain forever with you," he told Gregory. "There is no way to be separated from it or to lose it, because a spiritual thing is a forever thing, as we have already spoken of together. Vivian the woman, however, is not something you can hope to forever hold on to. Even if she is the most perfect companion possible for your soul, she will leave you one day, and you will have to go on alone. There is no way to escape the hard lessons that are coming. Prepare your heart now. You may meet her again one day, my friend," said Atta. "And if you do, remember my words and keep a space between this ideal spiritual love and your love for any particular person. When a person lets you down, that does not mean that God and his angels no longer love you. Keep things in their proper perspective. Do not let any troubles with your Vivian jeopardize any newfound strength that you may have been able to grow in your innermost heart. Love as God loves, unconditionally and in spite of all flaws, and you will retain all of the calm and peace of God, despite what happens in this world. Don't break again. You deserve better." "What could I possibly still deserve, as corrupted and broken as I have become?" "You know I am not flawless," replied Gregory. "What? Are only the flawless deserving of love, then? If yes, it would be even rarer in this world than it sometimes seems. You don't have to be flawless to be loved, Gregory. You are good enough. Tell yourself this 100 times a day, every day, until you come to believe in it," Atta told him. "Did you ever stop to think, I am a good person and do not deserve to suffer? That is what you should work on, strengthening this belief in yourself every single day." "I am a good person and do not deserve to suffer," Gregory thought to himself that night as he lay on his sofa and stared at the ceiling. "I am a good person and do not deserve to suffer. My sins I have already paid for. Now I deserve to forgive myself." It was a strange, new thought that he suddenly realized he had never had before, and it felt wonderful, as if Vivian were standing suddenly beside him, radiant with the glow of a saint. All good things come to an end, because all things end, and no one knew this better than Gregory. Spring turned to warm summer, and the guru business was going better than ever. Atta told Gregory that he was getting very close to his goal amount of financial savings needed in order to be able to return home to India and retire. He likely would have stayed longer to be able to capitalize on his significant popularity around New York by that time, but a letter arrived from India, letting him know that his father had passed away. Gregory arrived for one of their weekly chats, and was shocked to find Atta packing. "I'm sorry, Gregory, but I have to go," said Atta. "I have been, by Indian standards, a horrible son, and have left the care of my aging parents to my sisters. I sent money, and told myself that I would return home soon and stay for good, so that then I could care for them. And now, as you see, I have only one parent left to care for. If I do not return home to look after my mother, now that my father is no longer living, I won't be able to return home ever without horrible shame. As it is, she may be very angry with me for having left so long ago and not returned. I hate to say it, but her anger may be justified. I have been a rather unsatisfactory son." "Are only the flawless deserving of love?" Gregory quoted back to him. "I'm sure she will be happy to see you once you are back, and my deepest condolences on the passing of your father." "Thank you. Much like you and your father, we were never particularly close, and that only makes it worse now in my conscience. Now we cannot fix it in this life," sighed Atta. "But everything can be set right in the spiritual world, or so you have taught me," Gregory told him. Atta smiled. "Gregory, you former altar boy, you have become my best, if my most unlikely pupil," he said. "Now come and let us say our goodbyes. I have to pack quickly. My plane ticket is all set for a few days' time." Gregory was stunned. "A few days' time already?" he cried. "Oh no! You cannot go yet, Atta. There are still so many things I don't know. For instance, you never told me—" Gregory began. "We have spoken together for months, friend. What is it that I have failed to tell you?" asked Atta with a gentle smile. "You never told me what it is that I'm missing," said Gregory. "Well, that is easy." "Nothing," replied Atta. "What do you mean?" asked Gregory. "Haven't you been listening and understanding? God did not put you into this world as only half of a person. You are missing nothing. It is all right there. Everything you need to be happy. It is all right there." Gregory felt bitterly disappointed. "But what about the other half of me, the part that is entangled up in her?" he asked. God does not make half people, said Atta firmly. You are a full person, whole and complete in yourself, and each love is always whole and is its own perfection. Other people just make us resonate so that we can feel the fullness of our own shape, as connection and sharing are undoubtedly blessings, but their absence does not diminish the power of love. The entire universe is yours, and God is in your fingertips and experiences all of His creation through you. Don't you know? You have spent all this time looking for what is missing, but nothing is missing. You just need to learn how to go deep within and feel all of it. It is a matter of learning how to sense it, teaching yourself how to access it. You have only to look deeply within to know the truth of this and to feel it. This is why I did not tell you at first, because I thought you wouldn't have believed me. Now, I'm hoping that you can. Gregory felt a despair rising up in him. I want to believe, but it goes against something that I know inside of me like a certainty. And just look at the overwhelming evidence that there is something wrong with me. How can I be missing nothing and yet be such a mess? How can others be so well adjusted if there's nothing that they have that I lack? Is it that others are well adjusted, or just that they have not even begun to formulate or consider the questions that trouble you? And would you want greater ignorance if it would help to assuage your inner struggles? No, you would not. You are proud of your thoughtfulness and of your sensitivity. Even your complaining about it belies a certain vanity. Atta touched Gregory's shoulder lightly and looked into his eyes. You are really wondering if your time has been wasted, he said quietly. Well, look, what is time really worth to one such as yourself? Don't take it so hard. But the truth, cried Gregory. I do care. I do care about that. The guru's smile grew wider. Ah, how different a creature you already are from the creature you were when we first met. You are already far better than you were. Listen within. It is all there. Nothing is missing. There is no lack. You just needed to learn to access it. This is what your meditation practice will be to you. She will be there. She is always there. Wherever you are, she is also. You are whole. I see her right here, standing beside you, in front of you, merging with your form. One soul in two bodies, and every breath stitches you further together. I see. But at this point, Gregory felt such a rush of emotion that he had to bring his sleeve up to his face to hide his tears. Oh, my friend, said Atta gently, what a great heart you have, and how much stronger you will make it with your new efforts. We have to say goodbye, but I will never forget you, and you will be in my prayers every single day. And look, here, I have something for you. What is it? Asked Gregory, sniffing loudly. A piece of paper? Yes, you had asked me once for a magic mantra, so I have thought the better of it, and have written one down for you. Repeat it 50 times a day. No, 500 times a day. You are extraordinarily stubborn, said Atta, smiling. Gregory opened the folded piece of paper. But this paper has only 3 words on it. Why add more when it says all that it needs to? Atta pointed out. Are you paying me by the word? I am loved, Gregory read aloud. Is that it? "That is it," said the guru. "My address in India is on the back. I shall stay with one of my sisters for a bit at first, so that is her address. I worry about you, Gregory, and how it will go with you if you meet your Vivian again, as I'm beginning to think that you will. You love the beautiful. Can you forgive her if she ages? Never let her see your sorrow over her aging and inevitable approaching death. It would be hard enough for an older woman to live with, well," Atta waved a hand over Gregory's face and torso, "all of that, while at the same time feeling that you are both just waiting with dread for her to die. I have written a letter for you when she passes, in case I am no longer around to speak with you then." "What do you mean?" cried Gregory, alarmed, as he took the sealed envelope from Atta's hand. "Why could I not come to India and visit with you then?" Gregory, sighed Atta. "I'm older than your Vivian. She is likely to outlive me. I am well more than halfway through this life. We have to confront our realities. None of us can keep up with your longevity." Gregory felt himself choking on his feelings. "There is no need to keep up. It doesn't matter. In my heart, I refuse to let any of you go. Inside my heart, the love I have ever borne my friends will always continue, undiminished." "Oh, come now," said Atta, his voice gruff with feeling. "It is not so much as all that." "You have saved me! You have taught me so much!" cried Gregory. "Not really," said Atta. "All I have done is give you some tools with which to fight against your own selfishness. It was nothing all that great. The real salvation will come from you yourself. Now go in blessing." "Can I come with you? Or maybe I could give you more money before you go," asked Gregory. "Just wait here and I can—" "No, Gregory. I don't need anything else, and you cannot come with me. It is time for our goodbye." Gregory hesitated. An empty feeling threatened to swallow him whole. It was like the evening that he had seen Vincent Serafino for the last time, this dread of the end. "Time for goodbye? Don't you have anything else for me? Like perhaps some kind of last-minute leaflets or printed brochures that you could hand me?" he asked, attempting to make a jest, but realizing he sounded more than a shade too heartbroken to truly pull it off. Atta smiled. "You don't need any leaflets, my friend, or any more magical mantras. You have all you need. Go forth, be strong, do not give up, and as you say here, Godspeed." "He just packed up and left?" Wolf asked Gregory. "Yes, just like that," Gregory said glumly. "Perhaps the law was on to him at last in regards to that fake Swami business," Wolf suggested. "No, that is not what happened," said Gregory. "Besides, although he may have been a fake Swami, he was a real guru, and a friend, and an incredibly wise and holy man." Wolf looked at Gregory. You do look changed," he said slowly. "That glint of despair has left you at last. I thought it was mainly due to your return to us, and to the soothing passage of time. But perhaps there was more. Perhaps this man at last taught you to accept that Frau Vivian is gone." "Not at all," said Gregory. "On the contrary, he showed me how to prove to myself that she is never very far from me at all." "So you are still determined to find Frau Vivian, then?" asked Wolf uncertainly. "Isn't this decades-long obsession with one woman foolish?" As Ferdinand once pointed out to me, how is the obsession with one particular woman all that different from an obsession with one particular book? I believe his exact words were, We all have our own irrational passions. Is it really all that different? Some things are hard to let go, Gregory said. Wolf coughed. I suppose I deserve that. Perhaps so. None of us are perfect. We each put a different face on what we imagine will be our salvation. In the end, neither books nor women can save you, you know, Gregory told him. Only you yourself can save you. It is one of the sadder realities I'm learning. If it is true that she cannot save you, then are you sure that the end goal is not to move on and let it go this time? Asked Wolf. Gregory shook his head. I could never truly let go. Past all the hurt and disappointment, you fight on for an outcome that you can live with, and continuing to love her is the only option I could live with, whether she can save me or not. It just took me a while to learn to do it right, continuing to love her without losing my own ability to live. That is all. Well, you do seem much better. Perhaps you really are ready at last, and it is time to contact the investigator, said Wolf mysteriously. What investigator? Asked Gregory. Does this have something to do with Henderley? No, not Henderley. Never mind, actually. Well, as long as you are stronger in your spirit, that is what counts, said Wolf finally. Atta thought so as well, said Gregory. He told me that the holiest religion was the one that brings you results. Wolf looked thoughtful. Maybe this guru wasn't so bad. That is a practical view that even I could respect. Gregory smiled. He did not think it worthwhile to try to explain that Atta blended this practicality with the fervent veneration of an imaginary personal saint called Kalpana. Wolf was a wonderful person, but this was a kind of thing that he would simply never be able to understand. Dita came into the room just then. Oh, Gregor, I'm so glad you are here. We have not seen much of you these past months. How was the Wagner Festival in Bayreuth this year? Gregory asked him. Dita and Wolf had just returned. Oh, it was splendid. Sehr, sehr gut, enthused Dita. You should have come with us, Wolf told him. Wagner? For days on end? Bah, said Gregory, with a dismissive wave of his hand. Dita gave a laugh, and then he said, It is finally not raining, and so I'm going out riding this afternoon. Will you come with me? Riding? Asked Gregory. In your car? No, not in my car. On horseback, said Dita. It is one of the best delights of living in the country here, such as we do. Now that the cities are all horse-free, you have to live out in the more pastoral parts of the country to get on the back of a horse. You mean I've been back all this time, and you haven't told me that you keep horses stabled somewhere? Asked Gregory. Dita shrugged. You didn't ask, he said. Gregory considered this offer. You don't have to go, said Dita. I will not be offended if you decline. No, you misunderstand, said Gregory quickly. I'm not thinking of a polite way to decline. I'm counting in my mind how many years it has been since I last went riding. Oh dear, said Wolf. With your poor memory, this calculation could take a while. Perhaps you could leave the calculations for later and just go out with Dieter. He tries to get me to go with him sometimes, but I do not enjoy being jostled about on horseback. Even in my youth, I failed to see the appeal, and was decidedly a salon creature. But I have no riding gear any more, Gregory said. Dieter brushed off the argument. You can borrow some of mine, he said, although my riding trousers are likely to look like knee breeches on you, ha-ha. But horses do not like me at first, as I'm sure is the case with you, Gregory said. It surprised him how much his mouth was fighting with something that his heart so wanted to suddenly go and do. Why not just accept Dita's unexpected invitation and go out and ride? Dita grinned. Do you imagine that I've not broken them in already? he asked. "They won't fear you." "They? How many horses are we talking about?" asked Gregory. "I have 4 of them, and I board them at a stable not 15 minutes away by car," said Dieter. Gregory shook his head in amazement. "I did not know this. You never mentioned it before. I'm also thinking how odd it is to ride a car over to a stable so that one can ride a horse around a farm for recreation. My father would have thought I should have my head examined to do something like that." "We live in a new era now," Dieter told him with a wide smile, "where all of our small past pleasures have become impractical but wonderful luxuries." The day was bright, the summer breeze damp and warm, but somehow still wonderful. Gregory climbed up, moved into the perfect spot in the saddle, and gave a huge, contented sigh. Then he touched the horse's side, and horse and rider moved forward into the sensuous breeze. He thought for a wild moment that his heart might rip right down the middle from the extreme delight of it. Such joy! Why had he ever stopped riding? Gregory wondered. He had not been on a horse in practically 30 years. The air moved through his now fluffy hair and around his neck, and Gregory suddenly found himself moving in between the minutes and seconds, separate from all time, just the same as it felt during meditation. Atta had been right. Time was not the answer to everything, and it was not even helpful to forever be its slave. To suddenly break free of time and place was what was needed. Gregory gave the horse beneath him the slightest touch, and the animal sprang forward at greater speed, and they streaked along the emerald grass of the farm field, flying as if entirely unbounded by the earth. This being a field on a modestly sized farm property, Gregory and his fast-moving horse soon came to the end of it, and they were forced to slow. An edge of young forest stood before them, and Gregory decided to move on into the trees. He brought the horse to a canter, and then the trees were upon them. And then, as Gregory leaned down low, forward over the horse's mane, to be able to ride underneath low-hanging tree branches, heavy with thick green leaves, it suddenly happened. In a split of a second, everything became very, very clear. He could see the light coming through the branches of the tree, could feel the sure and certain movement of the horse, could feel beneath him the exact curvature of the earth, and saw his entire being enfolded around him as he bent forward. Suddenly, in that single instant, he knew exactly who his personal saint and salvation was, and it both was Vivian and wasn't. Scientific predictability, cyclicality, connection and its various physical forces, repeating patterns, mathematically accurate equations that could describe recurring phenomena. The horse took another step. Gregory's head buzzed. How was it that he had never really thought of it like this before? There was almost mathematically predictable cyclicality here. 1926, 1936, 1948, 1959. Finding her again in a city of millions against the most unlikely odds. And suddenly, he knew that all he had to do was wait. Vivian, Vivian, he thought, I will catch you this time. I will catch you and not let you go. See the pattern and then follow along to its purpose. What could the purpose of this pattern be? To finally catch her. It had to be. I couldn't do it before, thought Gregory, but this time I will not fail. This time I know how it all works. He could feel himself as a single point hung on the vast landscape of space, and the light of every star shone through him. For here there is no place that does not see you. Connection was not so unusual and mysterious a force. It was so simple. It was the rule, not the exception. Everything was connected. The feeling was only for an instant, but it was the window into some kind of much deeper understanding. The horse moved on into the thin woods, in the same sunlight of the same day, but its rider had, in that instant, been changed. He knew exactly who it was that he loved. The next day, Gregory went back into the city to a jeweler and bought himself a gold wedding band. "Ah, a replacement band, then?" inquired the jeweler, when Gregory indicated that he did not need to look at ladies' bands at the same time. Gregory smiled. "Yes," he said. "A replacement for my previous blind wandering," he thought to himself. He strode out of the store with an immense smile on his face and a small sheet of paper that was his deposit slip and receipt, since the ring had to be sized. "I'm in no hurry," he thought. A few days later he came by to pick it up, and as he slid it on his hand, a brief flash of that same understanding of the workings of the entire universe came over him again. This time perhaps just a memory of the original experience, but still just as warm and just as wonderful. He stepped out of the store into the hot sunshine, and there was Vivian waiting for him, smiling at him and graciously allowing him to take her invisible arm so that they could go on together.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me. And I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good.
It was a magic ring with amazing properties, he quickly discovered. Women and even men had always stared at Gregory wherever he went, and this did not cease, but he was shocked at how much of a difference it made to have a wedding band on his hand. Women looked down, and then looked quickly away. Perhaps their cheeks had slightly flushed, but he was certainly left in peace much more than before. It was high time, too, because women in these modern days were almost just as likely to pinch a man's bottom as vice versa, so it was excellent to have some kind of subtle, magical defense like this. Gregory had longed for years to be able to blend in and to not attract as much attention. And with this ring, although it could not make him less tall, he suddenly had something that helped him feel tremendously more comfortable. "I should have done this years ago," he thought. But whom would I have wed? I only really found her now, he realized. "You look like you had a good weekend," Ferdinand remarked when they met for dinner at the Waldorf Astoria. He had just flown into New York earlier that day and was moving the food around his plate with enthusiasm. Then he noticed Gregory's wedding band. "Wow, and it looks like you even got married. Who is the lucky lady, Morgan?" "Oh, my wedding band?" asked Gregory. "I got tired of having women throw themselves at me," he explained. "Poor you. And with that they don't any more? Asked Ferdinand skeptically. Well, it weeds out the more restrained ones at least, said Gregory. Oh, so that now only the hussies throw themselves at you, is that it? Chortled Ferdinand. You have hit upon a brilliant tactic. Maybe I should employ it myself. Would you believe that I enjoy touching wanton women even more than I enjoy pushing uneaten food around my plate? He grinned. I would, laughed Gregory. Wolf wrote to me that you look much improved these days, and I must say, you do look more interested in living than you did when you left Florida. Does this mean that you are now ready to enjoy the company of women again, or are you still pining for your Vivian? As long as Vivian is living, I will have no other, said Gregory simply. He did not add that it seemed unlikely that he would have any other even after she was gone. She must be an older lady now, though, no? Asked Ferdinand. Do you mean to look for her and find her again? If yes, perhaps you should hurry. There is no need to hurry, said Gregory calmly, and there's no need to look for her. She comes into my life of her own accord, when the time is right. I do not control the mechanism by which the universe keeps throwing us together. So you feel certain that she is eventually going to reappear in your world without you doing anything for it? Oh, I would hate for you to become terribly disappointed and broken-hearted again if it does not come to pass as you hope, or if she is a solid 90 years old before that happens, said Ferdinand, looking with worry at Gregory. You need not fear for me, Gregory replied. She is already on her way. I can feel it in my bones. Ferdinand gave a doubtful look. Is this new ability to see into the future something that your Indian guru taught you? He wanted to know. Gregory smiled and kept his calm. No, he replied. I cannot see the future, but the truth is everywhere. Only the reception can be better in some places or under certain conditions. Ferdinand furrowed his brow. What does that mean? You haven't, taken heavily to drink again, have you? He probed cautiously. Gregory laughed. No, I'm a new-made man, he said. Oh, but now I'm worried about what that means. That Indian hasn't gone and made you an opium fiend instead, or a teetotaler, has he? Asked Ferdinand, shuddering. I cannot imagine you as a teetotaler, Morgan. I'm sorry. No, I'm not entirely a teetotaler, said Gregory happily. I can drink carefully. I just need to always remember who it is that I love. I thought that was the entire problem, that for a while there you were searching for your beloved Vivian at the bottom of every bottle of whiskey that you got your hands on, said Ferdinand. No, the problem was that I confused her with someone else, said Gregory. Look, better than explaining is to apologize to you. I was horrible and useless when we lived in Florida as neighbors, and I ran off and dumped my few belongings on you without much care for the work you would have with them on my behalf. Can you forgive me? Oh, forgiven, all forgiven, said Ferdinand readily. Now just stay well, all right? He looked into Gregory's eyes for a moment, and then looked at his watch. We will need to hurry if we are to get to Dita and Wolf's in time for Tarok, he said. You mean I should move my food around my plate more rapidly, joked Gregory. I know you and Wolf ridicule me for this, but I can't help myself. I find meals in elegant restaurants very soothing, said Ferdinand defensively. I actually understand, said Gregory. When I was younger, I used to find lying with women soothing. Then I lost that, and did not know what I found soothing anymore. It has taken me many decades to find out what makes me happy now. And what is that? Asked Ferdinand. Sitting very, very still, with my eyes closed, said Gregory with a smile. Ferdinand looked confused, then shook his head. I can see that you are happy, Morgan, but at the same time, You have never made less sense, he said. They hurried to catch a car to take them to White Plains, and as they got in and rode along the way, Ferdinand updated Gregory on all that was new in his life since they had seen each other at Christmas. The subject of Vivian did not come up again. Then they arrived at Wolf and Diethe's place, which was the only brightly lit house on the street at that hour, and they got out, paid the driver, and then Gregory rang the bell. "Ach, gut, you made it!" cried Wolf. Diethe stood right beside him, ready to take coats and luggage. "Why don't you have a proper butler?" Ferdinand asked Wolf. "Who wants to be bothered? Also, servants are so outdated. This one here is not a flawless butler, it is true, but he makes up for it in many other areas," laughed Wolf. "Yes, like in billiards," said Dieter. They all laughed. "All right, zum Tarocktisch," cried Wolf, as soon as all greetings were done and all luggage set down. They followed him into the brilliantly appointed dining room, where the silver trays and pawns and tarot cards already waited at each place setting. There are 4 of us now, Gregory thought. 1 more even than there had been when Carl had played. Oh, how I miss Carl. No, how I used to miss Carl. Now everyone is right here, even Carl. As long as my heart is here, then all those that I love are here also. Carl, and my mother, and Dorothy, and Jimmy, and Sophie, and Atta, and Vincent, and Anastasia, and Vivian. They all sat down, and Gregory had to explain to everyone again about his new wedding band, and then he lost 4 games in a row and hardly noticed, but he hardly cared, since he was so busy, feeling the nearness of all his beloved visible and invisible friends. At last, Wolf declared that there had been enough tarot for one evening, and then everyone moved on to the living room. Gregory had just sat down on the sofa next to Ferdinand, when Wolf reappeared with 2 pieces of paper in his hand. "Here I have a note from Mr. Henderly of the FBI," he said. "It may interest you all to know that he has successfully concluded the transfer of my copy of the Mind Psalter to the library at Princeton. He sends his warmest regards to you all, and recommends that we all meet again in a few years' time so that we keep in touch. And now my second item here is for you, Gregor. I have found Frau Vivian." It turned out that it was not hard to find her at all. The investigator came across this within the first hour of beginning his search. Ferdinand was so surprised that his elbow upon which he had been propping himself slipped off of the armrest of the sofa. "What the—" he exclaimed. Gregory felt a warmth fill the pit of his stomach and then come up the back of his neck. He did not need to look there to know that Vivian stood behind him, in her light blue robes of the Virgin Mary, and with his mother's smile on her face, resting a small, light hand on his shoulder. He reached up and took from Wolf what turned out to be a small newspaper clipping. He looked down at the words, which danced playfully before his eyes, and then he read aloud, "Miss Vivian Westcott, the incoming president of the Litchfield Garden Club, will be addressing the members at the annual celebratory dinner at the Lake Warramog Country Club. The event is open to all Garden Club members and will take place on Wednesday evening, September 18th, 1968. A hushed silence fell over the room as the proverbial pin dropped. "I have her home address and her telephone number here, too. Well, what do you say, Gregor? Can you forgive me that I kept you both apart in the past, and then on top of it all lost her address?" asked Wolf. Gregory nodded. He was suddenly too overwhelmed to speak. "I do this to set things right, But you must do your part too. Please do not let this be your undoing, Gregor, said Wolf. I look at you and see Karl's shadow more and more. Please be careful with yourself. What will you do now, Gregor? Dieter wanted to know. Will you really go and see her? He is trying to say something, said Ferdinand, looking at Gregory. What is it, Gregor? Asked Wolf. He turned to Dieter. I can't hear what he is saying, besides some mumbling, he grumbled. He is saying, I am loved, said Ferdinand in an odd voice. Do you think he has taken leave of his senses from the sudden shock? No, said Dieter, smiling at Gregory. I think that, on the contrary, he has found them at last.